I'm incredibly focused on the farm and excited about the future, and the fact that it's finally bearing fruit is incredible. And boy, do I want them up. I'm not trying to stump for 36-year-old vets who are hitting 230 by any stretch. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the idea to me that you would take it so far as to give off starting pitching, which is literally the one thing they need more of, in a year where they are now 4 games over 500, less than 70 games in, and in a playoff position. Wow, I am categorically opposed conceptually to that idea, because this fan base knows better than anyone. Like, yes, call me crazy. Yes, this year could end up being a World Series year. Absolutely. It's baseball.
Sure, anything can happen, but let's not ignore what we've seen thus far. Bailey got called up. He was better than the player that he was replacing. Casey Schmidt got called up. He's been better than the players that he's replaced. I think there's a chance, and I've seen that kid, Wisenhunt, and I saw a ton of Kyle Harrison. They're the kinds of starting pitchers that when they blossom will be better than Alex Cobb, Alex Wood, and Anthony DeSclafani.
Those are like they're first-round draft picks.
And these guys are close.
So that's great. Well, yes, they're close.
So
but
all I'm saying
you also
is,
don't want to rush it, do you?
Well, I don't want to rush it, but at the same time,
their confidence.
Well, I don't think it would. I don't think it would.
Harrison still needs to find the strike zone a little bit more consistently. No, you don't want him to come up and start. Like, but
Mark, there's always some debate who's ready, who's not. I mean, we both know that Brian Sabean knows a lot more baseball than either of us, and yet he went with Benji Molina for half the year and left Buster Posey in the minor leagues. And are we supposed to believe that Buster Posey was going to fall on his face?
Maybe
if he had been called up 2 months earlier.
You'll never know. I mean, this is the debate that I've had with Warrior fans for months now, who are like, "Oh, Moses Moody had a good playoffs," which proves that Kerr's an idiot for not playing him earlier. Well, how do you know that he would have played like that in the playoffs if you had played him earlier? You don't know. You don't know. And everyone in that organization has clearly stated that if you want to go back to, say, January, Moses wasn't there. He wasn't locked in. He wasn't ready. There is a reason there are minor leagues. People need, you don't eat your steak before it's cooked. Like, you gotta season that thing. And so,
but also the other side is that, you know what, Steve Kerr is not above making a mistake.
Of course not.
The Giants are not above making a mistake.
No one's saying that.
So
no one's saying that.
You got to give people a little bit of room to say, you know what, they're doing it this way.
Okay,
but I wouldn't do it that way. And I might be right. But I might actually be. I might have a better feel for this than they do.
You might,
even though it's their players.
Like, it's a hard line to draw. I get that, but what you're saying, I mean, and I know you don't think this. Why couldn't I go? Well, then you need to season Trey Lance. We need to see this. Got to bring him up. And let's see.
Well, I mean, maybe that's the case. I personally would love to see Trey Lance.
Right, but not at the expense, potentially, of games. And that's where I'm at on the Giants. Sure, Schmidt, Matos, anyone, be there. I want both. I want development and winning. That's been Farhan's message from the beginning, and I've bought it to a point.
Teams react differently, though, to trades, Mark. I mean, 2011 Giants were cruising after Posey hit Cousins and he was out. They were cruising. They played above their talent level for 3-4 weeks. Then Sabean went, traded Zach Wheeler for Carlos Beltran. Mm-hmm. He hurt his hand, but either way, the Giants had kind of tanked at that point, and the whole season went down the tubes, and Beltran walked at the end of the year. So it's like, there's expectations, and I think that when you're loose, like the Giants right now, they're playing loose. Nobody's expecting them to win. They're introducing young players to the big leagues. I heard Pavlovich say it last night in the postgame. I completely agree. There's a joy and a fun and a looseness to introducing some of these young players to a veteran outfit that changes the vibe. And if you suddenly then go buy, a hired gun, now it's like, wait a second, they're expecting us to win, and it changes the vibe back.
That's two different things, though. I agree with you, and I would say if the vibe is so wonderful, how do you think the vibe in the clubhouse would change if you suddenly dealt their second-best starting pitcher? I bet the clubhouse would hate it. So there's two different things here. You're talking about Are you going to go buy big by giving up big-time prospects? I'm not a proponent of that. It's a very different thing to sell off your established players also who have been there all along and been a part of the winning, and you're going to give them up for more in the future because you're essentially saying this team, we don't really – I know you've won more games than you've lost, but we really don't think you're going anywhere. That is not going to land in the clubhouse at all. They would hate that.
I mean, I'm not looking at Alex Cobb like Roger Clemens. I'm looking at Alex Cobb for what he is, which is a 500 pitcher who's having a nice little run. And guess what? If you can pivot off a nice little 500 pitcher who's having a nice first half and get something of significance and call up Kyle Harrison, man, that might be your win-win right there.
If it works.
Yeah.
If it works.
There's risk involved with all of this.
I just to me, taking down their starting pitching is the one thing you can't do right now. I'm not saying Alex Cobb is some perfect game 2 playoff starter, but right now that's who you got. Now, if you got something else, if Kyle Harrison comes up next week, rolls off 6 dominant starts, well, now maybe we're in a different conversation. I don't know. But my bottom line is I'm not willing to give up on this season. I don't know. Why would you do that?
You're terming it something. You're transition. You're in a transition year. And you say give up on the season. I look at it as transitioning from a free agent laden older team to a homegrown younger team with more upside.
But you're doing that anyway. It's already happening.
Yeah, but
why would you need to push it further?
Well, there's no rotation spot for Harrison and Whisenhunt, and if those guys deal in the next 3 weeks, you could actually.
I think there is.
Make room for them.
They're using openers. They do have those spots. Alex Wood is hurt. Mania has not worked out. Stripling is hurt. DeSclafani's wobbly. I mean, it's Logan Webb, then Alex Cobb, and I don't know on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday every week.
I hear you. The Yankees did this a few years ago. They had Aroldis Chapman. They moved him to they moved him to the Cubs. They got Gleyber Torres, and they went and signed Aroldis Chapman in the offseason. And they had Gleyber Torres and Aroldis Chapman.
Great.
So I mean, there's ways to do this creatively. I'm just not going to be like, you know what? No. I'm not listening to calls on Alex Wood. I'm not listening to calls for Alex Cobb.
I didn't say that.
I'm absolutely listening to calls. And guess what? I just saw a baseball, a Bleacher Report article about the 10 most attractive starting pitchers at the trade deadline. And Alex Cobb's on this list.
Great.
And he's got a $10 million club option next year, $2 million buyout.
But it's funny the way you say that. If he's one of the top 10 available pitchers, I know who I want to have him, the Giants. If that's who's going to be attractive to a contender, I'd like him on this contender.
But you don't know what you could get in return.
I don't.
And if you could get something that was a kind of...
like what?
Well, like a foundation piece player.
But that's not usually. Who's giving up foundation piece players in order to contend at the deadline?
I think a lot of teams have traded really good players. We could go through the years. I mean, the Astros got Jeff Bagwell away from the Boston Red Sox at the trade deadline for Larry Anderson.
Yeah, but it's usually for prospects, and I just feel like this is going in 2 different directions. If Alex Cobb is this guy who, as you say, has never had a good second half, then who's giving up a foundational player for him?
Well, nobody's trading typically their number one prospect anymore, but the big step in baseball development is AA. And it's like, if you hold on to a Cobb or hold on to a Rodon or hold on to a Bumgarner, what do you get? You get a sandwich pick between the first and second round. That guy's a high school or college guy, and he immediately goes to the rookie league, and you might have a piece to the puzzle, but it's probably 3 or 4 years in the offing, and so many guys just kind of die at A-ball. All I'm saying is if you trade a guy at the deadline, typically you can get somebody who's already succeeded at AA, which to me, the odds of that guy making it to the big leagues are got to be 30, 40% greater than the draft choice. So that's all I'm saying.
I'll say this, 2 things. First of all, Austin in San Jose, one of our very faithful YouTube watchers. Thank you for being here every day, Austin. Austin just said something that I think comes up in every single conversation that we have like this when it comes to teams. And I will reject this statement across the board every year, every time, no matter what. I've gotten it a billion times. It usually comes right before someone calls me a homer. Austin says, hey, Willard, the Giants are not winning the World Series this year. Here are the facts, Austin. You don't know that. You don't.
It's baseball.
Do you want
Anything can happen,
I
Austin.
Scroll
I would
back
definitely
on
say that.
YouTube and see how many people told me 3 months ago the Warriors are still in this because it's not like the Nuggets are going to win a title. That's stupid. We do this every year. I was told in January last year, Willard, the Warriors are not winning a title. Stop being such a homer. Then I went to the parade. So stop telling me you know what's going to happen. In 2010, they were dead in the water on September 1st. In 2012, they were dead in the water in Cincinnati and St. Louis. Stop telling me you know what's going to happen. In 2014, they were dead in the water in the last game until Madison Bumgarner came out of the pen.
Yeah, but here's the thing about the deadline.
You don't need.
I know you don't know, but
so stop. It's weird to me that people do this to their own team.
Well, because here's the thing, Mark.
Root for your team. They're winning right now.
I don't think they're going to win as is.
I don't think they're going to win either, but they might.
But I think if they traded for players to help them this year, they're not. I personally think they're a nice story. They're above 500. They're playing well. They've got a great vibe. But I don't expect them to win the World Series this year as is. But if you told me at the deadline they got Shane Bieber or Lucas Giolito, like a big time guy, starting pitcher coming back, now they may be on that list. But what does it cost to get that
I don't know.
guy?
My guess is
I'm not willing to move off of the prospects at this juncture, because I really believe that this year is about setting them up for 24, 25, 26, 27. I don't know. For me, I don't know about you, but I'd like a nice 5 or 6 year run with Farhan and Gabe and the current regime with homegrown players coming out of the system. And the same reason that Farhan has stated, and you've agreed with it in the past, that, hey, we're not going to go into the free agent market and really compete for free agents until we're ready to win as far as our system. Well, now we're seeing that happen, right? The system's starting to produce some players. And so maybe next year in free agency maybe is the time to go after a big-time guy like a Shohei or whatever, because you've got this momentum of prospects coming. So it's all about timing,
well,
really.
But I'm with you. I don't want to give up a big-time prospect.
Like Luciano's.
No.
You might be able to get Lucas Giolito, but do you want to trade Marco Luciano?
I don't think you have to, Lara. I really don't. I mean, again, they got Chris Bryant for Alex Canario a couple of years ago.
Caleb Killian. And those guys were decent prospects at the time.
They're decent, right. Luciano's not a decent prospect. He's a big-time prospect.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to
go. But, here's the thing, Mark. I mean, they signed him as a five-tool shortstop. And from what I've heard, shortstop is not in his future.
It's been a while.
And maybe the infield is not in his future. And we may be talking about a good hitting left fielder with bat speed as opposed to an all-world shortstop. Well, that takes his value down several rungs, in my opinion.
Except for, are we already looking at their future shortstop? So maybe that's all taken care of already. I got no problem with a left fielder. The Giants have had a revolving door since Bonds over there.
Yeah.
So let's get a left fielder who can hit 30 home runs. That'd be amazing.
Yeah,
I'd take that. I don't know if that's what he's going to be.
But he's also had back problems.
He's got problems.
And,
I'm excited over the last 5 days. The guy's homered every other at bat.
I know. It's just like you got to. The most important thing the Giants could do is scout their own system. Just have a real good knowledge of who do you got, and I'm sure Farhan's doing this. Who do you have that you believe in? Who do you have that you believe in but you don't think is going to do it on a certain level? You know what I mean? And then you know where Baseball America and where the industry rates your prospect. If you have a prospect that you think is a 6, but Baseball America and the industry rates him as a 9, maybe that's a guy to move, right? Maybe that's Luciano.
I don't know what he thinks about him.
Yeah, we don't
know. We've sort of danced around for a couple of years of does Farhan like Patrick Bailey better than Bart? I think we got our answer. The answer is yes, and he was right.
I like him better than Bart.
Absolutely. I mean, Joey Bart, listen, Bart and Ramos were the two names for a couple of years. I don't think they're going to work out.
But I think Bart is going to fetch something. I really do, because look at the catching situation around the big leagues.
That's true.
There's no good young catchers out there, and at least Joey Bart's a big, strong guy with a lot of bat speed, high pedigree, and
0
potential.
Home runs all year.
No, I know, and I'm not saying he's the guy or doesn't need some work, but I read an article Monday about the Marlins are desperate for a catcher. I'd take Jazz Chisholm off their hands right now and just say, hey, you know what? Giants are last in stolen bases. Throw Jazz Chisholm out there as a guy who can play multiple spots. How great would Jazz look in a Giants uniform?
Jazz Chisholm for Joey Bart?
Well, I'm just saying, when you have a catcher that's young, controllable, and ready to play in the big leagues, or at least on the verge of being ready, and you're looking at a team that's staring at nothing, you might be able to get Jazz Chisholm for Joey Bart. You might. He's hitting 210. He's hurt.
Here's what I would say also, and I know Farhan says this when he gets asked this question. Everybody likes to label their team when they get to the deadline. Are you a buyer? Are you a seller? And Farhan will say, I reject both labels. We will look at every single offer as they come and decide, is this a good move or not for our team in this moment? And if it's a good move, we'll do it. And you've seen them do things that are almost considered buying and selling at the exact same time.
Darren Ruff, J.D. Davis.
That was literally one of the greatest trades in recent memory, and it didn't seem like a big deal, but Darren Ruff left, barely got another hit, and the Giants got a haul in return, led by a major league player in J.D. Davis, who is succeeding at a high level.
Yeah, great trade.
Followed by prospects as well.
Yeah.
And so that almost felt like a
deal.
But it felt like a sell/buy at the same time. It's like we gave up a major leaguer, but we got a major leaguer in return, and we added to it like a sell deal. So I don't know, man. Like when I watch him at the deadline in recent years, we can talk about the offseason and free agency. That's been maybe a weak point. The deadline has been a strength to me.
No doubt. And I like his approach. I agree with his approach. Just, you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a sell. It doesn't have to be a buy. It could just be an old-fashioned baseball trade where we have this surplus, you have that surplus. Let's match up and swap some players. And I think Farhan has kind of shown. I mean, and not only has he, to me, he has more credibility today with me than he had in March because we are starting to see the evolution of his amateur draft.
Yeah, a couple of his picks came up.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's been huge.
So that gives him greater credibility. And I think Giants fans feel pretty good. I bet you Giants owners feel really good about where they're sitting right now.
It's not just a couple of his draft picks. Don't you dare think I've forgotten what you said about Lamont Wade before the year. I remember
Lamont Wade was terrible last year.
And there was a reason, and they tried to tell you he was hurt. They also thought that he was going to be one. They said, of all the people who will benefit from the shift going away, this guy's going to be one of the tops.
He's been very good.
Fantastic.
I was wrong about Lamont Wade.
Well, and I bring it up because it's not just...
I was wrong about Lamont Wade.
No, it's not just Schmidt and Bailey coming up. But if you do look at Tyro Estrada, Lamont Wade, to a lesser degree, but good day to bring it up after yesterday, Mike Yastrzemski. These are three people he found in other minor league systems and acquired for next to nothing. Tyro came over for cash considerations, and the dude is playing like an all-star. Looks like he's going to be here for a long time.
How about Brebbia? How about DeSclafani? I mean, he's found these guys too, and they've fulfilled their potential. Sable this year is a Rule 5.
Rule 5 guy.
He was a nice little pickup for sure. He's done some nice things. I mean, let's be honest. The old saying is the best deal is the deal you didn't make. The best deal for the Giants was that they didn't saddle themselves to Carlos Correa for 13 years and $350 million.